We want you to learn from leaders in the field, stay inspired, and help you make learning stick for everyone. Welcome to Unleashed Learning TV. There's a lot of discussions taking place right now about trauma and trauma-informed teaching and learning practices, and that's why we brought Dr. Tom Brunzell to you today. Now, he's an experienced teacher, school leader, researcher, and educational advisor, and currently he's the director of education at Berry Street. Now, his new co-authored book, Creating Trauma-Informed Strengths-Based Classrooms, is now available, and I really believe that if you want to make learning stick for everyone, this is a not to be missed episode. So, Tom, welcome to Unleashed Learning TV. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, William. Nice.
Well, I wish we could be in person, but we're both in lockdown. And so this is the best of both worlds in the sense of getting to be together. And as you know, at Unleashed Learning, what we do is we help educators learn the system that makes learning stick for everyone. And one of the keys in that system is the key of students for teachers, but also for presenters and staff developers, the key of learners. And we spent a lot of time on Unleashed Learning TV educating our audience and educating me as well about those important keys. And I think your new book, which is incredible, can really help us think about who our learners are in new ways to get learning to stick for everyone. So I'm really excited that you're here.
Thank you.
So Tom, now I read the book, but some people might not have read the book yet. So I thought we should start with the definition because you're talking about trauma-informed practices. And trauma is getting a lot of attention right now. So could you give us a definition of how you define trauma?
The definition is an open one, and we started writing this book before the pandemic because at Berry Street in our research and practice, we work with young people and children and their families who experienced great adversity in their lives. And so the definition that we started with, which is trauma, is the enduring belief that the world is no longer good and safe after you've experienced an adversity. And that can be a one-time adversity or it can be a repeated adversity. We call it relational trauma, which is when someone close in your life who is meant to care for you may be the source of the adversity. So your listeners can imagine those scenarios, and happy to talk about that in the interview here today. But what we now understand is it's not the event, because unfortunately we're all experiencing adversity now, but it's our responses to the event. So some of us have a lot of support around us and some of us don't have those same supports. And so the enduring impacts on the way we manage stress, the way we form relationships, the ways that we can focus on learning can lead someone to be labeled trauma affected.
It's an incredible definition because I think people can really understand that and use that. And I think it helps us think about who our learners are from that definition. So thank you for the definition. And what I want to jump into now is thinking about our classrooms, because I want to know now presenters and staff developers, I think, can still use this information, but I am talking about classrooms right now. And I want to know for students who've experienced trauma, what are the kinds of needs they have in our classrooms?
I'm going to pick you up on something you just said around experience trauma, because it's not just experiencing the adversity I just discussed, but it's also acknowledging the impacts of something we call secondary or vicarious traumatic impacts. And that's when you are listening to or exposed to the details or even mirroring in a physiological way the physical impacts of the person that you're supporting, students or teachers in classrooms. Those vicarious impacts, I sadly have to now admit, and maybe a moment of grace and compassion for all of us, everyone on planet Earth has been exposed to these kinds of details over the last 18 months. And so when we are thinking about the impacts and the application of trauma-informed practice, we now realize it's for everybody. Now, you mentioned the classroom, because at Berry Street, I have the privilege and honor of working with a fleet of clinicians, social workers, therapists, and youth workers. And so trauma-informed practice for those professions is very specific. And then specific to me and you, people who are teacher people and research, educational research people, our province is schools. So we are not therapists. So I want to be very clear with my definitions in honor of the professionals that I work with in our care team approaches and stuff, that for teachers, we are holding students in a very particular way when it comes to learning, because I think you'd agree, learning isn't just smooth sailing. It's not just like, oh, I can do this, easy peasy. But learning does involve the body's escalation. Like, can I do this? Do I have the capabilities? Do I need the resources? Am I about to expose myself as ignorant in front of my friends? Like, all of those capacities, I'd like our listeners today to consider that is managing your stress response in a really healthy way. And the young people that we support are not able to do that yet because of the impacts of trauma and adversity on their physiological growth. So when they're faced with the challenge and don't know what to do, they lose their minds quickly. They go into reaction mind quickly. And so we can see why their bodies are just not ready yet to do the learning that's challenging and interesting to them.
It makes me think, we talk a lot at Unleashed Learning, we talk about who learners are matters, but we talk a lot about it's not just the head, it's the whole body. Yeah. And so you're talking about the whole body of a human being and the conditions we create to support the whole body in the room. I've often said it goes from the heart to the head, learning. And so we've got to create safety for the heart to get to the head. And that's, I'm thinking that body perspective. So I just want to mention that because I hear that. And you also mentioned something else which goes to the next question is, here in Sydney, we're in lockdown. You're in Melbourne in lockdown. All over the world, COVID is having different kind of impact. And I want to know, is for students who've experienced trauma, how is this time impacting them, this kind of COVID time? I mean, that's a general question, but is it impacting them in different kinds of ways if you've experienced trauma and then this goes on? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The research from the last 12 months is abundantly clear that vulnerable learners before COVID are definitely made more vulnerable now. Everything from impacts of technology to family and community supports being, at their most necessary and rationed, within the inch of our lives now to keep our communities moving forward. I love that you said heart, because when I'm going to take a wild guess, because you and I are about the same age, right? We're both like 35.
25.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, 25. Okay.
25.
Right. Everyone's 35.
Yeah.
When we were becoming teachers, nobody talked to us that our students' bodies were connected to their brains. I only learned about learning and learning intervention, and this is how reading works, and this is how you help kids solve nonfiction real world problems. Like, that's what we learned to do. But in the advances of trauma-informed practice, the word heart is everything. We do focus on the heart's ability to regulate the body, because steady state learners can have a heart rate elevate and say, I'm not sure I can do this. It's okay. I know how to seek preemptive support. The young people we serve, we will often measure their heart rates in terms of numeracy and sciences and self-care and biofeedback. But we are very aware that these students have an elevated baseline for stress tolerance even before they step inside the classroom. So somebody nudges them, or the teacher gives them the wrong look, or they're just not prepared. That's right.
That's right.
And so what we're noticing in the impacts of our current COVID impacted world is that stress tolerance is went maybe from this to this, and that we are all on edge. And the plea for all of us is, we're human beings, we're in this together. And there's no clear definitive end in sight, because when it comes to resilience, it's always like, keep your eye focused on what you can achieve and where you can keep moving forward. And now that forward is quite uncertain for all of us. So you can see, yes, we all are managing daily micro moment stressors, just like the kids are.
Well, it really brings me to two pieces I want to talk about in the interview. But what I'm thinking about is, we talk a lot about that Kiev classroom and how to set it up. to lower stress levels because of the bodies of the students, which brings me to the next question.
Yeah.
Now, we talk a lot about rituals and procedures at Unleashed Learning, right?
Mhm.
And you talked about in the book about predictability. And predictability is kind of connects to rituals and procedures to me because it's a way of being. And so I'd like you to talk a little bit about, can you talk about predictability
Mhm.
and how that supports students who've experienced trauma?
Yes. In our book, our teams have helped us at Berry Street understand unpredictability equals risk. And so when we perceive the world as unpredictable, that unpredictability itself makes us feel like the world is risky, and therefore we'll do things to make it feel less risky. Linking this response to our prior conversation just now is the heart is a regulating organ for us, the most important one, let's say. The classroom has its own community, its own heart, as it will. And teachers, I think, can be therapeutically informed to hold space, to be a container to hold the community together. So one thing we recommend is how many routines and predictable, consistent activities can we do to create a rhythmic classroom? I know I'm speaking your language.
I just want to dance up and down when you're talking.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, keep going.
I'm sure the viewers
Yeah.
will like that. For instance, every single routine in a classroom can be formed as a rhythm of inhale, exhale. Like there's a time when we're exhaling, we're coming into the room. Now we inhale together in a morning circle routine. And at the Berry Street School, we care about circle so much. We don't just do it in the morning as a 7-minute check-in. We do at least 3 to 4 circles a day for the students to say.
Love that.
Yes, the world can be unpredictable. The
That's
world
right.
can be dysregulated, but you come into our classrooms and we breathe in together. Now we breathe out together. We breathe in for the mini lesson. We breathe out for the work period. We are working in groups. Now we come together, And you can imagine nothing simple. When we teach these routines and share them throughout the chapters, we know that it's never as simple as teacher A doing this.
That's
and
right.
then our teacher comes in, and then the science teacher, and now we have a replacement teacher. What we found is, and this is, I'm going to preface this, it's both harrowing for principals, but kind of amazing, that in schools that are really humming with these rhythmic routines, when a replacement teacher comes in who doesn't know these routines, we see the same cohort of kids go bananas.
That's right.
And they come in, but the great news is the replacement teachers get the support from principals. So you got to learn this stuff.
Well, it also speaks to the relationships, and it speaks to then, I mean, for me, I just talk all the time, and Unleashed we talk about all the time, that key of classroom, and that key of classroom, why teachers need their own classrooms and why it's set up in a very specific way and the predictability that's created. So I can go on about this, but I do want to jump to I've alluded this as well. Now, we talk a lot about Unleashed Learning about who the educator is matters. And we say that seriously. So a lot of our programs, they do a lot of reflective practice from the inside out. And what I loved about your book is you talk about who the educator is matters. Thanks. Especially with trauma-informed practice. Yeah. And it's not a bunch of strategies. It's actually about who you are, how you show up. So can you tell us a little bit about what are the things that educators, we have to know about ourselves that could help support students who've experienced trauma?
Few things to consider for our teachers out there. One, we are constantly modeling adulthood. We are constantly modeling, it's awesome to get an education. This is who you want to be when you grow up. And so we're mirroring and modeling that the more time you spent learning is worth it. And I wish that I had been told this years and years and years ago when I was a teacher in New York City, because I was modeling adulthood as in, if you don't get what you want, you raise your voice a little louder. And therefore I would yell terrible things to kids like, you need to calm down. And now I just think, oh, what was I modeling just then? Like, I certainly wasn't modeling how to find your center and breathe and be de-escalated so you could learn stuff. And so, yes, it's important about what our educators are saying to kids. I'd also like to put a little more pressure on our shoulders. It perhaps, from our research, matters more about what you're doing non-verbally with kids. because our kids may struggle with cognition and learning right now. I mean, that's who we're there to support, but our kids are experts in reading the room non-verbally. They are experts at knowing who holds unconditional positive regard for them or not. They are experts who know who wants them in the room, and they know who has the ability to be an adult with the presence of mind to support them. So I think our kids know, and they will tell you when they feel you're being pretty inauthentic.
I always think Paulo Freire says we read the world before the word. So the students are reading the world. They are very smart. They can read us. And so it just reminds us that who we are. It's not strategies. It's actually how well do I know myself? What are my own triggers? How do I regulate myself? How do I show presence? And that part of the book, I just kind of was jumping up and down again. Okay, so let's jump into the last one if I can.
Okay.
And I want to ask, because I'm sure people are asking, and you talk a lot about in the book, is if we had a trauma-informed strengths-based approach or practice, could you give us a sense of what it would look like in the classroom? And one of the things I noticed is it's probably not cookie cutter, like it's all the same, right? But there are some predictabilities or some kinds of ways of being. So could you give us a sneak peek or a look inside of that, please?
I'd love to. So if we could swing the whole book open and reduce it to 3 categories, these are the 3 categories. From the area of trauma-informed practices, I want teachers to be thinking, how do I build regulated learners, as in emotional regulation and physical regulation? And there's so many things that teachers can do to build a culture of co-regulation. That is, I'll define that as when we're working with a young person who does not yet have the ability to self-regulate, then we need to be the regulators, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, all those relational strategies. The second is to remember that this student may be pushing you away, and it's not about you unless you've made it about you. So a lot of our kids are pushing away relationships because they just haven't had a history of strong relationships for learning with trusted adults. You are that person, but just like I made tons of mistakes, I pushed a lot of kids away and reenacted those dominator power values that they expected from teachers. And therefore that is even giving more ammunition for kids to say, you're not here for me. You don't deserve to be my co-regulator right now.
It almost proves the world for them, right?
It does.
Proves the world. Yeah.
They're closing that loop of understanding that, yes, I predict that adults, when I do naughty things, adults are just going to come right over me and try to push me down into my chair, sometimes scarily, literally. But the third step after building self-regulation and relationship for us is focusing on kids' strengths. Now, I know that sounds like a very Pollyanna-ish thing to say, but for us, it's really trying to reframe when we're looking at a struggling learner to think, what is right here, right now? Like, when is this kid on task? Yes, it looks annoyingly stubborn, but we can flip that quickly to say this kid has perseverance and fairness as a strength. And then from our behavior analyst friends at Berry Street, we know it's about creating conditions for success and remembering every single kid has strengths, and they are not going to feel like you're there for them unless you recognize what those are.
Man, I mean, it makes me think we've done a lot of interviews with teachers and leaders and multilingual students, and people always said to us, this is for everyone. And I think of your book and this conversation, this is for everyone. And I know it's very specific for a very specific community, but we all could benefit from the kinds of things you're talking about from my perspective.
We certainly see this as a universal approach. I mean, it is for everyone in that the times they have now proven to us that all of us can certainly grow and flourish with these kinds of strategies.
Well, I think it's a perfect way to end. I know you've given us extra copies, so we're going to promote that, and someone from the audience is going to get one of your books, so we'll make that announcement after the episode. So Tom, congratulations on the book. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I hope that we spread the interview far and wide, and made me think, we're all experiencing this right now, and some of us are experiencing this even more. So we need each other, and I'm hoping this interview helps people think about who their learners are during this really challenging time.
Thank you, William.
We'll speak to you soon. Thanks, Tom. So now it's your turn. We want to know, what's your main takeaway from the discussion with Dr. Brunzell? Now, some of the best conversations take place after the episode, so jump over there and let us know. And we're going to pick one of those responses and mail that person a copy of his new book for free. And also, while you're there, you can grab our new ebook, The 5 Essentials for Teaching, Presenting, or Running Professional Learning in a COVID, Post-COVID World.